Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that, well, it's always in the headlines, but can still feel a bit like a black box. Cryptocurrency. You've definitely heard the terms Bitcoin, blockchain, digital wallets, but how does it actually work? Under the hood. That's our mission today. We've gathered some great resources, the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum's Blockchain for Beginners Guide, insights from Wikipedia, Investopedia, and Kaspersky, too, to really help us unpack it all. So let's start right at the beginning. When we talk crypto, we're really talking about blockchain, right? That's the foundation. Can you help us get a handle on that core technology?
Absolutely. Happy to. So at its heart, blockchain is, it's essentially shared digital ledger, but it's tamper-proof. It records transactions, but across a network that's decentralized, peer-to-peer. Think of it maybe like a history book, tracking every exchange of an asset, but instead of one central library holding it.
Yeah, everyone has a copy.
Exactly. Countless people, rather computers around the world, each hold a complete identical copy. No single person, no single entity is in charge.
That decentralized part, that really is a game changer, isn't it? It's so different from, say, traditional banking.
It really is. And the EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum Guide, they describe it as a genuine paradigm shift. Think about your bank, right? If their central database gets hacked or goes down, the whole system could be at risk.
Yeah, a single point of failure.
Precisely. But with blockchain, that ledger, that record book, it's spread out across potentially thousands of computers. We call these nodes. Every single node has a full, identical copy, so there's no single weak spot. It makes the whole system incredibly resilient.
Okay, so these nodes are crucial. What exactly are they doing besides just holding a copy of this ledger? What keeps the network running securely?
Good question. So a node is basically just a computer that's running the specific blockchain software. And they do more than just store the history. They're actively validating new transactions, checking them against the network's rules. Once a transaction is validated, they broadcast it out to all the other nodes in the network.
So they're constantly talking to each other, confirming everything.
Exactly. It's how the network stays in sync, verifies the data, and ensures consistency across all those distributed copies. They're vital.
That distributed nature clearly adds a layer of security. And we often hear terms like immutability and transparency tied to blockchain. What do those mean for our listener, practically speaking? Are there nuances?
Right. So immutability basically means that once a transaction is recorded on the blockchain, it's permanent. You can't change it. You can't delete it. It's locked in.
Yeah.
The EU guide really highlights this as a core benefit, that unchangeability.
Okay, set in stone, digitally speaking.
Pretty much. And then there's transparency. Now, this is especially true for public blockchains like Bitcoins. It means pretty much anyone can look at the ledger and see all the transactions. This visibility, it helps build trust, right? Because you can check things for yourself. The nuance, though, often comes down to privacy. While the transactions are public, they're usually linked to these cryptographic addresses, not directly to, John Smith. So it's pseudonymous, not fully anonymous, which is a whole other discussion.
It sounds incredibly secure by design. What's the secret sauce behind that? Is it like a really complex digital lock and key system?
That's actually a great analogy. The EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum Guide, they compare it to a tamper-proof seal on a jar. If that seal is broken, you instantly know something might be wrong with what's inside.
Okay.
On the blockchain, this seal is created using complex math, cryptography. That's the key.
Cryptography. Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What specific tools are we talking about here? How do they create this unbreakable seal?
Well, the two main pillars are digital signatures and hash functions. Digital signatures are all about authenticity. When you want to send crypto, you essentially sign the transaction using your private key.
That's the secret code only I know.
Exactly, your secret. Then anyone else can use your public key, which, like the name suggests, is public, to verify that, yes, this transaction definitely came from you, and crucially, that it hasn't been messed with since you signed it.
Okay, like a digital signature confirming it's me.
Precisely. And then you have hash functions. These are, they're like unique digital fingerprints for data. You feed any data into a hash function, say a block full of transactions, and it spits out a unique fixed-length string of characters, the hash.
A fingerprint, right.
Yeah. And what's amazing is even a tiny change to the input data, like changing one number in a transaction,
completely changes the hash.
Totally different hash.
Yeah.
Instantly obvious. And here's the really clever part. Each new block added to the chain contains the hash of the previous block. This creates a link, a chain, where every block is cryptographically tied to the one before it. That's why it's called a blockchain.
Yeah.
And it makes changing past information incredibly hard without everyone noticing immediately.
Okay, wow. So we have this distributed ledger secured by this intense cryptography, but you mentioned thousands of nodes. How do they all agree on which transactions are valid and what gets added next? There must be some kind of agreement system.
Spot on. That's where consensus mechanisms come into play. The EU guide defines them as basically the rules of the game. The protocols that determine how all the participants in the network agree on the validity of new information before it gets added to the ledger.
So everyone agrees on the truth.
Exactly. Without consensus, you'd just have different versions of the ledger everywhere. Chaos. Consensus mechanisms ensure there's one single agreed-upon history across the whole network.
This leads to a really important point. What are the main ways these networks actually achieve consensus? I know Bitcoin uses one famous method, but there are others now, right?
You're absolutely right. The most well-known is definitely proof of work, or POW. That's what Bitcoin uses. As the EU guide explains it, participants called miners use a lot of computing power to solve these really complex mathematical puzzles.
A race, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. The first one to solve the puzzle gets the right to validate the next block of transactions, add it to the chain, and as a reward, they usually get newly created cryptocurrency. It's very secure, but as both the EU guide and sources like Kaspersky point out, it uses a ton of energy. That's the big drawback. This whole process, confirming blocks and generating coins, that's what people mean by mining.
Okay, proof of work. Energy intensive but secure. What else is there?
Well, a major alternative now is proof of stake, or POS. Ethereum actually just switched to this. Instead of solving puzzles, participants, called validators, stake or lock up some of their own cryptocurrency as collateral, like putting down a security deposit.
Ah, so they have skin in the game.
Exactly. Validators are then chosen to create new blocks, often based on how much they've staked, how long they've staked it, sometimes with a bit of randomness thrown in. It's generally considered way more energy efficient than POW. The EU guide also mentions a couple of others, like delegated proof of stake, DPoS, where you vote for delegates who then do the validating.
Like representatives.
Sort of, yeah. And proof of authority, POA, where validation is done by a smaller set of pre-approved trusted accounts. That's often faster, but, less decentralized.
Interesting. So different ways to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah, the guide uses a neat analogy. Think of a shared notebook. POW is like solving a hard puzzle to earn the right to write the next note. POS is showing you known enough pages to be chosen. DPoS is voting for who gets to write. And POA is like only a few trusted people have the pen. The goal's always the same, though. Agree on what's written, make sure no one cheats.
It's really fascinating how trust is built without a central figure. Okay, let's tie this back directly to cryptocurrency itself. The EU guide calls Bitcoin the first and most famous application of blockchain. What made it so revolutionary at the time?
Bitcoin was huge because it was the first to really solve the double spending problem for digital money without needing a bank or a central authority.
Double spending, meaning spending the same digital money twice.
Exactly. Before Bitcoin, that was a major hurdle for digital cash. How do you stop someone from just copying a digital coin and spending it again? Bitcoin's blockchain, transparent, immutable, maintained by all those nodes through proof-of-work mining, created a public record where every transaction was verified. It made double spending practically impossible in a decentralized way. That was the breakthrough.
So let's define cryptocurrency then, in practical terms. It's not physical money, obviously. What is it?
Kaspersky actually gives a good definition. It's any currency that exists digitally or virtually and uses cryptography to secure its transactions. Think of it as a peer-to-peer payment system. When you make a payment, it exists purely as a digital entry in that online database, the blockchain, the public ledger.
And it's stored in those digital wallets we hear about.
Right. But it's important to understand, as Kaspersky explains, the wallet doesn't hold the currency itself, like your physical wallet holds cash. It holds your private keys. Those keys are what give you the power to access and spend your crypto assets that are recorded on the blockchain.
Ah, okay. The keys are the critical part. So walk us through it. How does a typical crypto transaction actually flow through this whole system? Say, I want to send some Bitcoin to you.
Okay, so first, you'd use your private key, the secret one, to digitally sign the transaction details. Basically saying, I authorize sending X amount from my address to this other address.
Right, my authorization.
Then, that signed transaction gets broadcast out to the whole network, all those nodes we talked about. The nodes then check it. Does your address actually have the funds? Is the signature valid? They verify it based on the blockchain's rules and the consensus mechanism, let's say, proof of work for Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Once enough nodes agree it's valid, the transaction gets bundled together with other recent verified transactions into a new block.
Uh-huh.
That block then gets added to the end of the existing blockchain. And once it's added, it's there permanently. Irreversible, part of the official record.
Got it. Broadcast, verify, bundle into a block, add to the
And
chain.
this is the basic flow, yeah.
Now, Bitcoin is the original, but Wikipedia mentions loads of others, altcoins. What are some key variations and how do they try to differ from Bitcoin?
Yeah, altcoin is just the casual term for anything not Bitcoin. And they often try to improve on Bitcoin in some way or offer different features. For instance, Litecoin was one of the early ones. Its main goal was just faster transaction confirmation times compared to Bitcoin.
I guess speed.
Right. Then you have Ethereum, which is a huge one. As both Wikipedia and the EU guide point out, Ethereum's big innovation was enabling smart contracts. That really opened up the possibilities for blockchain way beyond just being digital money.
We'll definitely come back to smart contracts. Any other types of altcoins worth mentioning?
Sure. Wikipedia also talks about stablecoins. These are designed to have a stable value, usually by being pegged to something like the US dollar. The idea is to avoid the wild price swings you see with Bitcoin.
Trying to be more like regular money in terms of stability?
Kind of, yeah. But it's crucial to note, as Wikipedia points out, these designs aren't always perfect. We've seen some major failures, like Terra's UST, which collapsed dramatically. So stability isn't guaranteed. And then to quickly, you have things like meme coins. These often start as internet jokes, like Dogecoin. They're known for being extremely volatile, often driven by social media hype, and frankly, they carry a much higher risk of being scams or just collapsing.
Yeah.
Buyer beware, definitely.
Okay, lots of variety out there. You mentioned Ethereum and smart contracts really expanding things. Let's dive into that. What are smart contracts and what do they let people do?
Smart contracts are really a fascinating evolution. Investopedia describes them basically as self-executing programs stored on a blockchain. Think of a vending machine. That's the classic analogy. You put in money, the input condition, you press the button for your choice, and the machine, the smart contract code, automatically executes the action dispensing your snack.
So it's automated agreement execution.
Exactly. The terms of the agreement are written directly into code. When the predefined conditions are met, the contract automatically executes itself. And because it's on the blockchain, the transaction is trackable and irreversible. It's interesting, Nick Szabo actually came up with this concept way back in 1994, long before Gitcoin.
So just to be clear, these aren't like traditional legal contracts written in legalese.
No, not at all. Investopedia makes that clear. They don't contain legal clauses. It's purely code. Scripts designed to perform specific actions automatically when triggered. Their main advantage, like blockchain itself, is cutting out the middleman, removing the need for a third party to enforce an agreement. This promises more efficiency, accuracy, and again, that immutability once deployed.
But I imagine that automation and permanence must come with some downsides or challenges.
Oh, absolutely. Investopedia highlights a big one. Because they're generally immutable once deployed on the blockchain, you can't easily fix mistakes. If there's a bug or a flaw in the code,
It's stuck there.
pretty much. It relies completely on the programmer getting the code exactly right to reflect the intended agreement. And if they don't, those flaws can create loopholes that unfortunately can be exploited by bad actors.
Okay, powerful but potentially risky if not coded perfectly. And where does decentralized finance, or DeFi, fit into this picture with smart contracts?
DeFi is essentially building an entire alternative financial system using these tools, blockchain, crypto, and especially smart contracts. Both Investopedia and the EU guide explain it as enabling peer-to-peer financial services, so things like lending, borrowing, trading assets, earning interest, insurance, but all done directly between users without traditional banks or brokers.
A whole parallel financial world.
That's the vision, yeah. Using smart contracts to automate all those financial agreements and transactions on the blockchain.
So what are the supposed big advantages DeFi aims for? Why build this parallel system?
Well, according to Investopedia, the main goals are things like greater accessibility. Anyone with an internet connection could potentially participate. Also, potentially lower fees because you're cutting out intermediaries. Maybe more flexible or negotiable interest rates set by protocols rather than banks. And enhanced security and transparency because, again, everything's happening on that public, immutable ledger. It's aiming for autonomy.
That transparency aspect is interesting. How does that square with privacy? And what are the major risks people should be aware of with DeFi?
It's a key tension. DeFi transactions, while public on the blockchain, are pseudonymous, remember, linked to addresses, not names. But people with the right tools, including potentially governments or law enforcement, can sometimes trace activity. As for risks, Investopedia warns pretty clearly that DeFi is still very new. It's a wild west in some ways. It faces huge risks.
Like what kind of risks?
Technology risks the underlying protocols failing. Project risks teams abandoning projects. Economic risks assets losing value rapidly. And because it's largely unregulated, it's very vulnerable to faulty programming in those smart contracts, hacks, and outright scams. It's a space with huge potential, but also significant danger right now.
Okay, definitely a high risk, high reward area, it seems. Shifting gears a bit to the practical side, for someone wanting to engage with crypto, getting a wallet is usually the first step. What are the basics we should know about wallets?
Right, so Kaspersky explains crypto wallets simply as the tools, either physical devices or software used to securely store your private keys. Remember, the keys are what give you control. The wallet is how you manage those keys.
Okay. Are there different kinds?
Yes, two main types. You have hot wallets, which are software-based, usually apps or browser extensions. They're connected to the internet, making them convenient for frequent transactions, but generally less secure because they're online. Then you have cold wallets, often called hardware wallets. These are physical electronic devices, kind of like a USB stick. They keep your private keys completely offline, isolated from the internet. Generally considered much more secure, especially for holding larger amounts long-term, though they usually cost money to buy.
Hot for convenience, cold for security. Got it.
Mhm.
Now, we touched on mining earlier. With proof of work and Bitcoin, there's been a lot of talk about the environmental impact. Can you expand on those concerns?
Yes, that's a major point of criticism. The EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum Guide explicitly notes the severe concerns about the high energy consumption and resulting carbon footprint of public proof-of-work blockchains, particularly Bitcoin. That whole process, miners running powerful computers 24/7, solving those complex puzzles, it just consumes vast amounts of electricity. And often that electricity comes from fossil fuels.
Leading to significant emissions.
Exactly, greenhouse gas emissions. Plus, there's the issue Wikipedia also brings up electronic waste. The specialized mining hardware becomes obsolete really quickly, creating a lot of e-waste. It's a serious sustainability problem.
So, is anything being done? What's the path towards a more sustainable crypto future? Are there solutions?
Absolutely. The EU guide highlights that solutions are definitely being explored and implemented. A big one is the move away from proof of work. Shifting to more energy-efficient consensus mechanisms like proof of stake, which we discussed Ethereum doing, or proof of authority dramatically reduces energy use.
So, changing the underlying consensus is key.
It's a major factor. But there are other things too. Supporting mining operations with renewable energy solar, wind, hydro, optimizing the code in smart contracts so they require less computation, less energy, developing more energy-efficient mining hardware itself. And even things like investing in carbon offset programs to counteract the remaining footprint. It's an active area of innovation.
Good to know solutions are being worked on. Finally, let's talk regulation. This space seems to be constantly shifting, with governments trying to figure out how to approach it. What's the general trend?
It's definitely a hot topic globally. The EU Blockchain Observatory and Forum Guide notes that as crypto gains prominence, regions everywhere are grappling with how to regulate it. One challenge, as Wikipedia points out, is that cryptocurrencies can be classified differently depending on where you are. Are they commodities, securities, currencies? Each classification has different regulatory implications.
So, no global standard yet.
Not really, but there's a clear trend towards more oversight. Governments are increasingly stepping in. The EU, for instance, is kind of leading the charge among major jurisdictions. They've rolled out a comprehensive framework called MiCA markets and crypto assets regulation. It's one of the first detailed regulatory packages globally, aiming to bring clarity, consumer protection, and financial stability rules to the crypto market.
So the regulatory landscape is definitely evolving fast.
Very fast. It's a space regulators are watching extremely closely.
Wow, what a journey. We've gone from the basics of blockchain as a distributed ledger through the cryptographic magic that secures it, the different ways networks reach consensus. Then we saw how cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin brought it all to life, leading to innovations like smart contracts and this whole new world of DeFi. Plus, we covered the practicalities like wallets and the really important environmental and regulatory debates. It's so clear that cryptocurrency isn't just digital money. It's built in this incredibly complex, constantly shifting technological base that really challenges how we think about trust, value, and information itself. So as you mull all this over, here's something to consider. How will that ongoing push and pull between the decentralized ideals at crypto's core and the increasing push for regulatory control, how will that ultimately shape its future? How will it influence mainstream adoption and the next wave of blockchain innovation? It's a space where change is the only constant, constantly pushing boundaries.